Scotland has its fair share of monster stories. The Loch Ness Monster is the country's most famous one, and some know the story of Morag, the monster at Loch Morar near Mallaig on the west coast. It was also claimed a sea serpent was seen off the Angus coast in 1876 by the crew of a Broughty Ferry fishing vessel not far from the Bellrock lighthouse. But in central Scotland, the River Forth had its very own monster, seen by a group of men out duck hunting in early September 1938. As mentioned, Nessie is the country's most famous monster, bringing in thousands of pounds to the Highland economy. A photograph exists, supposedly of her, taken by a doctor on holiday in the Highlands in April 1934, although it's strongly disputed that it is indeed the mythical creature. Sightings, however, continue to be reported, with the most recent in 2013, when video footage was taken by tourist David Elder of something in the water, and the following year by Apple Maps, which took a satellite image of the loch, and reputedly it shows something like a large creature just below the surface. In legend, if Morag of Morar was seen, it was shortly before one of the hereditary people in the area died. In James MacDonald's Tales of the Highlands, he records seeing Morag one January night in 1887 when he was crossing the loch to stalk deer, while the most recent sighting of her was in 2002 when 4 girls claimed to have seen the creature moving in the loch. During that first weekend in September 1938, the group had gone out wild duck shooting on the windings of the Forth near Alloa. But they got more than they bargained for when they spotted what they claimed was a monster. It was described as a fearsome-looking creature with a long curved neck, and its head was said to be the size of a man's. Not seen in the river before this, it was thought to be a mammal, as every so often its head would appear out of the water for a few minutes before it dived below once more. The sighting was almost opposite the Hoch Farm near Cambus, as that was where the duck shooting proved most lucrative. In the party were 6 men who were split between 2 boats. Younger members of the group were the first to see the creature and attracted the attention of the older men in the party, Hugh McMahon of Bowhouse Road and John Clark of Carron Street, both Alloa, who were in the other vessel. They shouted over to them that some terrible-looking thing was chasing them down the river. Later, McMahon and Clark were interviewed about the incident and explained that their boat was near the other one, which contained the youngsters, but that the creature was on the far side of it. After shouting to the older men, the men in the second boat made their way to the bank, by this time scared out of their wits. They had never seen anything like it before. McMahon and Clark made their way to the area where the animal had been seen, thinking the youngsters had maybe been playing a prank. However, to their amazement and shock, the creature reared its head once more. This time it was at the exact same spot they'd been sitting just a few minutes before. For all they had their guns to hand, not once did it cross their minds to shoot at the sea creature at that point. They were just so stunned by what they were witnessing. McMahon said because it was so big, he described it as being of huge dimensions, neither he nor his companion spoke. None of the men had seen a creature like it, and all compared it to a drawing they'd seen of Nessie. They were adamant when questioned, that it definitely wasn't a porpoise, dolphin, seal or shark. They knew what they looked like, and this was not it. In all, the monster was seen 6 times on the surface as it came up for air that day. Each time it stayed above the water for around 2 minutes before diving below for around 10 minutes before resurfacing again. The men had hoped it would rear its head between the boats so they could take a shot once the shock of seeing it had worn off, but they were disappointed. Eventually, an opportunity arose for McMahon to take a shot from around 20 yards away, but almost as soon as he fired, the creature dived below the surface. He didn't know whether he'd hit it or not. Another eyewitness to the event was the farmer at the Hawk farm. Andrew Thompson had been alerted by the shouts of the men and made his way to the riverbank to see what was going on. He, like the others, was amazed when he saw it. He helped to spot it as it reared its head from the water, calling to the men and pointing in its direction. He too was later interviewed. He said it was the funniest looking thing he'd ever seen, not only on the River Forth, but everywhere else he'd ever been. When its head was above the water, he could see it clearly and described its neck as being roughly the height of an average man's body. He said that before the neck was fully extended, it formed a small hump on the surface of the water. He went on to say that when it was under the water, the neck, which was thought to be the size of the thickness of a telegraph pole, disappeared like a conning tower of a submarine. Its head was said to be the last to break the surface of the water. All of the men agreed that the animal moved very quickly, covering good distances in the time it took between appearances. They speculated on the damage that could have occurred to their little boats if it had chosen to attack them. It could easily have tipped them up. To date, the creature has not been seen since, but you never know what lurks beneath the surface of the water.